Thanks very much, Kelly. Yes, today we're talking about education on Lunchtime Live. And joining me in the studio is the Minister for Education, Gilbert Licudi, and the shadow spokesperson, well, not shadow spokesperson, Together Gibraltar spokesperson for education, Craig Sacarello. Thanks very much for joining me. We're going to launch straight into it. Education, lots to talk about with predicted exams and COVID and home learning, but we're going to launch straight into one of our stories this week, which was school dinners and the hot lunches. The company that was supplying them has gone into liquidation. And what struck me was when I spoke to the company, they said really COVID was just the final nail in the coffin. It was a very difficult project as it was because of the uncertainty with numbers and also because of the fact that there are long school holidays. So that presented problems with getting staff in. So can I just ask you, Minister, what lessons have you learned from this project with Smart Kitchens? Because obviously a tender is going out again to another catering company. The Chief Minister confirmed that on Direct Democracy this week. So what lessons have you learned so that we can ensure that the project is successful next time?
Well, the simple lesson that has been learned is that school meals are possible, and they were very, very, very popular. Clearly, there is uncertainty because you don't know how many children in each particular cohort is going to want to take up the offer of hot meals. There was a huge take-up at the comprehensives initially. There is probably going to be much more of a take-up in middle schools because smaller children tend to stay more in schools than the bigger children, the older children who a lot of them prefer to go out. But what we will now need to do is assess, and we're already looking at and engaging. We had a shortlist previously, so we're looking at the proposals that were made previously, engaging, and as you have indicated, we will be going out to expressions of interest so that anybody that is new, that didn't apply previously, that wants to apply to this, will be able to apply. And I envisage that we will be starting this again in January.
Going on feedback, though, is there anything that you would do differently that you might suggest needs to be done differently?
Well, each company will have their own proposal, and it's not a question of us saying you have to do it in this particular way. What we want is the delivery, the efficient delivery of hot meals in a balanced and nutritious way, in a healthy way to all school children.
OK, let me just ask Craig, what are your thoughts on the school lunches?
Well, first of all, it's very sad that Smart Kitchens have collapsed. I think they were a good offering initially, and it shows how difficult the future economy is for Gibraltar and the problems posed by COVID. I think there were a couple of things that could have been dealt with slightly differently, which would have assisted them in staying around for a little bit longer, such as the flexibility with labour laws in May. They were required to give notice for reduced hours for their staff, but due to the beat measures, which were fantastic for Gibraltar business, but there was a slight inflexibility there. So as a result, in June, July, their staff came back on full pay, full hours, with zero income, because obviously there's no school. So that was an issue there. The other thing was the rollout of their business model relied on 10 schools being catered for, and I think there was an issue in timing of schools coming online, but that's notwithstanding the fact that COVID has posed a huge problem. What I would like to say though is that a healthy diet does produce a good quality of life, and that has to start at the schools. And I think that the younger we start, the better we can educate. I think nutrition has to be seen as an integral part of education. It is so in countries such as Sweden, Singapore, etc. And the health benefits are far long-lasting.
And it can improve concentration and behaviour in the schools themselves.
Not just that, but bad diet can also lead to teenage depression. There's emerging evidence to relate that, and obesity has a propensity to reduce the body's ability to absorb nutrition, which can lead to mental health issues.
Craig has hit the nail on the head in explaining exactly the reasons why we decided that it was important to have these hot lunches in schools, for all the reasons that Craig has indicated, including health issues. In terms of the number of schools that came on, nothing would please me more that if we open in January and we restart the whole school meals process in January, that all the schools would be available and able to deliver hot lunches. Nothing would please me more. But that depends on logistical arrangements, operational arrangements by the company that provides this. And we will obviously have to work with whichever.
You'll be obviously subsidising and supporting the way that you did with this company, would you, with free lunches?
We have a manifesto commitment to provide free lunches for the first term in each school. After that, then the school meals are charged in the same way as they were charged in the second term for the comprehensives. So that is a manifesto commitment which we intend to absolutely adhere to.
Okay.
But that's an interesting, just if I may,
Very
Ros, that's a
quickly.
really interesting point of yours there, talk of subsidies, and it boils down to priorities, and perhaps there should be a debate as to whether companies such as these, because of the uncertainty of figures and the uptake of school children having lunch, going ahead, I think there should be a debate and possibly more support, cross-party support for
Okay,
such a
let's move on because we do have quite a lot to get through. Predicted grades are coming out very shortly. Just a question about those that are not happy about their grades, and I'm talking about GCSE grades because that's the important thing. We've got the A-level year starting in September. Now, what happens if a student does not get the grade that they need to be able to start their A-level in September? When would they be able to resit those exams?
Well, I think what you're talking about is the central assessment grades rather than the predicted grades. Predicted grades are something very different. Predicted grades is what you get in year 12 in order to put in your UCAS application to go to university next year. So your teacher in the centre predicts the grade that you will get for A-level. That is very different to the central assessment grade, which is the process that we have had this year. So as we know, exams were cancelled. They were cancelled fairly early on in the COVID process, and all exam centres were required to go through a process to assess the grades and rank the students. Those grades will be given out in August on the same dates that pupils would have got the A-level grades and the GCSE grades, and then there will be an opportunity in October and November. A-levels and AS levels will be available to be sat in October across the whole range of subjects.
Is that a special provision or is that just the normal provision?
No.
It is special.
This is a
Right.
special provision this year where the whole gamut of exams are being offered in the autumn term for precisely this particular reason, so that it acts almost as an appeal. So somebody who is not satisfied with a grade that they have been assessed and they have received has the opportunity now of appealing by taking the exams. Let me just explain that this is different to a normal appeal process. You always have an appeal process available to you for the exams that you sit, and then you receive the new grade and you're stuck with the new grade. That is what always happens. It's very different this year. This year, you have the ability to take an exam if you're not satisfied with the grade that you get, and you keep the higher of the two grades. So you don't lose out or you don't have to worry about lower.
Okay, but my
lower
question
mark.
is, though, for example, if you're not happy with your GCSE grade and you do take that resit in October, A-level classes will have started in September. I'm not sure when the October result will come out. Would they then be able to restart that A-level?
Well, the A-level class will start obviously in September at the
Yes.
beginning of the term, and students will be expected to meet the entry criteria.
And then
for
they will
each
be able to
particular-
join the
Well,
classes?
no, they will be expected to be able to meet the entry criteria. If a student subsequently gets a different grade, a higher grade, and wants to rejoin a class, then it will be a question of sitting down with a student and looking at the stage where the class is and whether the student can be accommodated.
Right, so it's discretionary.
Well,
It's on a case-by-case
It will be a
basis.
process of discussing with the student's needs and whether those needs can be accommodated, given that the course will have started. Remember that the sitting for October doesn't finish on the 1st of October. The sitting for October finishes on the 23rd or 25th of October. They haven't said exactly when they will be giving out the grades, but it will certainly be a few weeks or a couple of weeks later. So we're talking of at least after the midterm that we won't have those grades. So there will be a loss of 6 weeks, and the question will be, will this particular student be able to catch up with 6 weeks of work if that has been lost? And that will be assessed on an individual basis.
Okay, we'll go to Craig in a moment, but I do want to ask you a very quick question about Year 12s, because they went back to school to get some clarity, in the year ahead, because they've got A-level year coming up. But I've spoken to one particular Year 12, and I've asked him, whether they are getting predicted grades to go to uni or whether they're expected to sit a test when they go back. And he wasn't sure. Can you give some clarity on that?
Yes, I'm not sure what that particular student wasn't sure about, but the predicted grades is something that happens every year. It has absolutely nothing to do with COVID, has nothing to do with the fact that these examinations have been cancelled. So the process is, during the course of the first term, teachers will assess the grades that Year 12s will get and will predict a grade for the following year. And that is a grade that is used in the UCAS application, which have to be submitted by January.
Right.
Earlier for Oxford and Cambridge, but usually by January for all the other universities. That is a predicted grade basis. That is very different to the centre assessment grade, which is what the students will be getting this year, which is the actual grade, not a predicted grade. It's the actual grade that they're getting for the in place of the exams that they would have sat this particular year.
Okay, let's move forward to the home learning programme, if we may, Craig Sacarello, because I know that you had concerns about this. The home learning programme, we all accept that COVID was very unexpected and everyone had to improvise, but it wasn't part of the curriculum. So children have gone for months and months without learning on the curriculum. How concerning is that?
That's right. I mean, some people refer to it as the education epidemic as well as the COVID epidemic. And absolutely right. The government had to focus initially on the health considerations and quickly, shortly after that, the economic impact, because for obvious reasons, the failure to do so would have been devastating for Gibraltar. But what cannot be ignored is the huge educational deficit that is sitting there. I mean, it is the big elephant in the room. I think initially the courses that were offered were fine. They were a good stopgap. They were keeping kids entertained. But we would like to see a much stronger push towards an online educational system, so there could be a seamless transition between normal school life, albeit socially distanced one, and the return to a partial or complete lockdown or any interruption at all to the school program. Bear in mind that school children have already had a week off at the end of the 2019 summer term with the Island Games, and 2 weeks off those at the comprehensive schools with the introduction of the new schools, fabulous buildings as they are. So we already have a deficit there, a further 6 month almost deficit with the COVID crisis, and that needs to be remedied, and we cannot allow it to continue.
Okay, so Mr. Licudi, can I ask you, what are the plans, particularly if there's a second wave, what are the plans with home learning? Will home learning involve the curriculum, or will it be going off curriculum like last time?
Well, I have already said in Parliament that if we needed to reinstate some kind of home learning, we would look to make it more curriculum-based than
But other private schools are doing that. Why can't the government do that as well?
I think there are a couple of things, a couple of realities that we have to accept as facts. Firstly, I don't accept the suggestion by Craig that there is this deficit. The curriculum in the UK was effectively paused. So it's not that the curriculum continued in the UK and all UK students continued in school because there was no lockdown in the UK, or continued through home learning and continued to develop the curriculum, and ours have been left behind. That is not the case. So there is no deficit. There's nothing to catch up on because effectively it was paused at the time. We've got to realize that when we decided to do this and to close down a lot of the schools, we had to put together programs very, very quickly. Educationally, it was important to continue to allow students to have a facility which would allow them to develop skills, and that is precisely what we did. But there are two things which are absolutely crucial. Firstly, no amount of home learning is going to replicate a classroom. And if Craig has a magic wand and can tell me how we can replicate the classroom environment in home learning, I would be very, very happy to hear that. But classroom doesn't just involve a teacher delivering a lesson. It involves interaction with children. It involves learning support assistants, helping out either individual children or helping out a group of children. That interaction whereby a teacher goes round, helps understands the issues, answers questions. That is impossible to, and with learning support assistants involved as well in some classrooms, that is absolutely impossible to replicate.
Very quickly,
in a
let's
classroom
go to Craig Sacarello.
We're
running out of time.
Because the second major issue is that when we decided to close the schools, a number of schools operated as child supervision centres. They operated from 7:30 in the morning till 8 in the evening. They operated 7 days a week, weekends, public holidays, and over school holidays as well. We had teachers working 3 shifts, morning, early
That
afternoon.
was for a very limited amount of
that
students.
was for the whole.
though.
Yes, but that was for the whole amount of the lockdown period.
Yeah. Let's go to Craig Sacarello,
Just very
please.
quickly, first point on education deficit. I don't think education is just curriculum. I don't think it's just about ticking a box with doing sitting exams. Teachers, as Gilbert mentioned, are role models. It's important that they get in front of the teachers, that they learn a lot more about life than just the curriculum. Secondly, in terms of online learning, tech ed is the way forward. It's the way of the future. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen, but this COVID pandemic has accelerated that process, and it doesn't mean we should ignore it. It means we should be giving more attention to it.
We are running out of time, but I am going to throw you a last question because this is very important. Are the schools ready for the post-COVID era in terms of sanitising and social distancing, Minister?
Well, they certainly will be for September. I have made it very clear in answer to a question, in fact, from Together Gibraltar, from Marlene Hassan now in Parliament, that it is the government's intention to reopen all the schools for all the children. So from an educational point of view, we will return to normality. It won't be completely normal because there will be staggered entry and staggered exit. There will be special arrangements made. We will be keeping to, sometimes people talk of social bubbles. We will be keeping to educational bubbles with children that can stay in the same classroom, staying together throughout the day. But in terms from an educational point of view, it is our intention to return to normality.
Very quickly,
What I would say
literally
is that
10 seconds.
That's brilliant. I'd urge the government to think out of the box and think of using other venues around Gibraltar for education, not just such as sports halls, etc., like they are doing in many other countries.
Okay, I'm going to have to say goodbye to both of you. There's obviously clearly a lot more to discuss here, but right now we're going to hand back to Kelly. Thank you very much for listening.